just joking here, but it sounds like a new startup idea called AI Gaslighter, where people can put in their prompts and it's like, are you sure that's a good prompt?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I don't think you're good. You can try again. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Anyreach Roundtable, where we speak with leading experts on how AI is transforming industries. With AI changing at such a rapid pace, our goal is to provide a resource so you can better understand current state of AI, where it's headed, and how to stay on new trends. I'm your host, Richard Lin, the CEO of Anyreach, and I'm joined today by Janis of HyperScan, an AI-powered platform that supercharges LinkedIn for recruiters, salespeople, and investors. Thanks for joining us today, Janis.
Hey, Richard. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, just give our audience a little bit of background about yourself. It looks like you have quite an amazing kind of journey to where you are today, living across different countries from Latvia to New York. Can you share with our audience how you started your journey and how you ended up founding HyperScan?
Sure. As somebody coming from recruitment space, I sometimes joke that if I was a recruiter, I would not, if I saw my resume, I would not hire myself. It's just all over the place. But born and raised here in Riga, Latvia, then US educated. So my bachelor's is from UPenn, my master's from Columbia. In between, I worked in this really interesting job that was based in Istanbul, and we were doing like project work in Brunei, Ghana, Nigeria, Qatar, and some other places. And how I got, so after 9 years abroad, I returned to my native lands, the Baltics, right? And with the idea that I want to found something, and I got into talent space kind of by accident because I came back to my native country, and I was one of the quite a few people that were actually coming back at that point, because we had suffered from a big wave of emigration, and then people had started to kind of come back. And I found a community here called the Global Experience in Latvia, and in those meetups, a lot of companies started like asking for like, hey, do you know any good people in that network? And that gave me the first idea of like, hey, this could be actually like a nice recruitment business. So that was my first foray into entrepreneurship. But then after 2 years or so of doing recruitment as it is, I think I came to a point where I was still a newcomer to the space. So I was not like, I'm born and raised in this whole industry. But I had seen the best practices, and a lot of what I saw did just not really make that much sense. Like I could see a lot of potential for improvement, and HyperScan is actually one of those ideas, right? Like how do you speed some of these processes up, right? How do we go about, hey, it's not how it's always been done. What can we use now? Like how can we leverage AI to actually do what we do, but just much faster and more efficiently? So I guess that's the whole story. Through energy industry to international diplomacy to actually doing entrepreneurship in talent. So, but I'm happy where I am.
Got it. Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's I always joke that I need to be a little bit more cultured and leave the Bay Area. So it's always inspiring to meet other folks that have traveled the world, have explored different kind of industries, as well as taking those experiences and building kind of a company around it. So super interesting. So just a quick question, we're starting to see everyone and their grandma pretty much jump on the AI bandwagon, especially in the recruitment space. We have incumbents such as Workday offering kind of AI co-pilots for HR to quickly, query their intranet, to entrants like Phenom who are using AI to filter out resumes. Based on your experience, how do you see AI transforming the recruitment and talent industry?
I think we're in the beginning phases of something much more monumental, because what I see here, right, there's two sides in this marketplace, right? There's demand and supply of labor, and what is actually happening is on one side, which you mentioned, right, you have a lot of AI tools, including ours, right, but others, kind of filtering and trying to sort the information that's on the resume or in the LinkedIn profile. So that's the recruiter's help, right? But then on the other hand, there's tools like, lazy apply. It's like, just press a button and we'll just apply you to thousands of jobs using AI. So there's like this battle going on at some point, right? Like obviously one of them feeds the other and vice versa. And I think that basically what it says is right now is we've taken an old process right? People are writing up resumes and people reading resumes, and we have just multiplied the speed of it using AI. But the process is kind of still the same. So I think with AI, we will have to change or evolve this process. And I do believe that sooner than later, I think we'll have like actual agents, both on the supply side and demand side of labor, evaluating and trying to make better matches in that market. And because when I talk to people right now and says, oh, AI is replacing the recruiter or the interview, something like something. Well, to them I say, right now we actually have a very inefficient market. Just imagine, right? I need to apply to like 300 jobs to get one, and the poor recruiter has to like take a look at 3,000 resumes, say, right, to find the right match. So it's just a really inefficient process, right? Because there's just a lot of unstructured, messy data. But if we get AI's brains to actually get the right matches there, I think it will actually lead up to a more efficient process. How we get there, I think we'll need to go beyond the current idea of like you type up a resume and you type up a job description, that's it, right? Like that's like the basic. But yeah, so I think that's a more monumental change. The short term, I really think we will not be able to do without AI, right? Like there's this battle going on right in the market. So if you skip one side or the other, I think you're just not gonna have a lot of results.
Got it. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense that, when you think about the marketplace of recruitment from both the supply and demand, that AI is going to be kind of instrumental to helping both sides connect at a better pace. The way I like to think about it is like Tinder, except you can't swipe right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the way,
actually,
yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I think the way you see, like, the way I see markets, right? If on one side of the spectrum, there's like the absolute commodity, right? Let's say like gold, or there's like certain kinds of oil, right? There's like, Brent and so on. It's a very specific commodity. People, they're as messy as it gets, right? So there's just a lot of friction in that market. And I think with the advent of AI, we can actually start kind of reducing that friction, right? With the smart enough processing power to make the right matches. I don't think anybody wants to send like 1,000 resumes, right? What you want is maybe like 5 good job interviews. So that's the goal here, right? Like, so that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think we should like lose focus on what actually matters, instead of just this kind of noise that's happening in the market.
I mean, right now it's pretty much like quantity and volume on both sides, and you're really trying to get down to quality with AI. I heard recently how some candidates were hacking the process to get through the AI filters. It's pretty interesting actually, where they'll apply to a job and then they'll include the keywords of the job description. Right. But essentially what they do is they make the font into a white color so humans can actually see it. So when it gets past the AI filter and it gets to the recruiter, it's like, oh, okay, interesting. His experience doesn't necessarily match, but he somehow made it. So we're gonna have a conversation.
Or we're gonna have a conversation with the app developer, because that's clearly not what I wanted, right? So
it's always interesting. AI is pretty smart, but some people are pretty creative in bypassing. So.
Yeah.
And, with all the buzz going on with kind of AI in the recruitment space, what have you seen and what do you know about the space that everyone else is getting wrong?
Well, that's like a very bold claim to make, right? Like everybody's not getting this, but here's like one thing that I see where the industry is right now at, and that will need to change, is AI is only as good as the data. So what we've seen a lot in AI recruitment is kind of like, oh, just throw in your job description and let the AI take care of the rest. Well, the problem is the job description is pretty, sorry, but shit usually. It's a very condensed informational sort of source, right? It doesn't, because it's a job ad, right? It's supposed to be like kind of more often than not, it's just a short version to catch like a person's attention, right? Obviously, we could be talking about job descriptions, right? But then it's like, it's a bit better. But still, it lacks the context of like what the company is, what the projects are. Like, there's just so much of data that has to go into this assignment of what needs to be found. Like, who are we looking for? What do we offer, and so on. So that's like one side. Then on the other side, the resume, right? The resume is a tool for a human to process. So this whole idea of like, oh, I'm going to send you one pager of me condensed into maybe like 30 odd lines. Good, yes, if there's a human reading it, right? Like, because we cannot process more. But now that we have AI, that doesn't really describe who I am, right? So I think we should be thinking about this. The data sets will need to change, both for me as an applicant or, as somebody who's a passive candidate on LinkedIn, and the other side, right? Who am I talking to from the company point of view? So yes, and I'm just like seeing like, this we need to rethink the fundamentals. But for now, mostly the idea that we've seen is like, oh, just throw in the job description. And it comes back to HyperScan as well, right? Like what the app does is you can type up very specific questions of who you want to find, like any kind of yes or no filters. And there have been users who say, well, can I just throw in my job description? Sure, you can. We're actually implementing a feature like that, but I guarantee you will not have all of those questions inside your JD. So you need to go deeper, right? Because now you have this leverage, you have this processor. So I think that will change, yeah. Something just we haven't really seen much on the market yet.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think with any sort of AI application, it really comes down to, the quality of data, right? Kind of in your experience, what do you see both from the employer side as well as a candidate of potential signals or data that would actually help AI, be more, readily adopted and more effective? How do you think about that?
Actually, yeah, like from some that we've kind of talked to, I was going to get to the point of like Anyreach, right? A voice agent, right? Because I for now, I'm just talking about like reading stuff, but listening to stuff. Some employers, we here locally as well, but also in the US, are waking up to the point that we need to again rethink fundamentals. Like, why can't we give an interview to everybody? Oh, because that would take too much time. But wait a minute,
right.
Now we have AI for that. So there's again a mismatch. Like, let's think about more like blue collar roles, right? Let's say I need to hire great car mechanics. Up until this point, we have forced them to produce stellar resumes, right? Like documents. Like, why are we evaluating car mechanics on documents? We should just talk to each one of them, right? And direct our AI to extract the information that we need, and maybe give a bit of a sort of, that these boxes are checked or not. So again, like, I think they are kind of waking up to these kind of ideas, but it's very difficult to break out of your mold, right? Like, because, how can I call like 500 applicants? Well, now you can, right? And here's the thing is like, again, to the people who say, yeah, but how, that loses the whole like human equation and yada, yada. My counter to it is, well, you wouldn't have called them anyway, right? So now at least they have a chance to kind of talk to an entity, right? And get evaluated, because they would just be filtered out. So, yeah, anyway, just maybe a bit of a corollary of like what I said before, but yeah, with the voice agents, I think it's going to change a lot of this like information processing too.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I mean, I think we're starting to see how AI is unlocking new types of use cases that just previously weren't available. As you mentioned, you can't interview 500 people. You just don't have enough time, and it costs too much. But now with voice and other kind of modalities, you can actually reach out to every single candidate that's interested in the job.
And also, sorry, yeah, sorry, you're saying?
No, I was gonna say we usually don't do self-promotion, but we appreciate it.
I love the space, right? And I see how this will be very useful in recruitment. And also to your point, right? Like people sprucing up their resumes. Well,
Mm,
people also bullshitting on their resumes. Like,
mm,
oh, let's just have a phone call, or maybe a video call, and the AI is going to ask you 10 questions. Okay, if you are applying to, I don't know, like PPC marketer role, then tell me a little bit about your strategies. Like, spot on, right?
mm.
So it kind of like cuts through the,
All the
the noise
noise.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, absolutely. So kind of, taking a step back as we kind of think about what we've heard in the market. I mean, this is kind of different across industries. Some are more early adopters, but some are a little bit slower or even anti, AI. For instance, we've talked to some of the education market folks, and
Mm.
we actually got an email where one of the decision makers responded and said, "We're anti-AI," right?
We've had that too, by the way. Like some recruiters
Right.
have like, yep, yep. It's like I'm better than your AI, whatever.
So it's an interesting dynamic right now that we're seeing. And one of the key talking points around this topic is, AI replacing jobs and people at some point, obviously, for some roles. And kind of due to this fear that really kind of stifles AI adoption. And so, how do you think, how do we incorporate the human element to, kind of what AI is doing as more of an accelerant and augmentation of human performance rather than just straight, outright like replacing people?
Yeah, it's a tough one, to be very honest. Is We do have a side business called the AI Academy where we help like other companies kind of grasp the concepts and implement AI in general. And what we've seen so far, I'll give you an example, right? Like we we teach like no code automations, right? So automate your business
Mm,
processes, make.com, like have like GPT nodes in it and so on. And in part of these courses or these sort of workshops, there's also this open-ended sort of like, hey, so come up with your own examples and we'll just implement it right away. And we have seen a lot of people, unfortunately, they're just dumbstruck. They don't have ideas of what they could do, and I think that's dangerous, because I think also from the research I've read is I think a lot of people used to think that the AI will kind of raise the bar of productivity for everybody, but it kind of could be that it's more like a multiplier. So I don't know if you're like, I don't know, you're super creative and your capacity of doing work is, let's say, like 50, and there's somebody else who's more mediocre and they're like 25. You multiply that by 100, and the difference grows even, more pronounced. So that's like one thing that I'm kind of like, it's always on my mind, because with the tools like I don't know, Lovable or Devon or so on. Now, like when people start to code, right? You need to be creative. When you can like, launch things, right, with the help of AI, but you need to have ideas,
mm,
right?
mm.
So it kind of accelerates one kind of people, and maybe if you don't have those ideas, you just don't know what to do with this. So that's like one concern I'm having, like this inequality that can grow in the society, and the other is just pure, straight up data processing jobs, right? That are, you know, I again could come back to this whole idea of recruitment, right? Like my data processing job is literally just screening resumes. Those jobs, I think, will be gone. I don't have a good outlook there for people doing them. So there'll need to be like some requalification, and also to the point of maybe even the phone interview or the video interview used to be just human domain. For a lot of them, maybe there won't any be like that. So what we'll do with our time? So it's like a long-winded answer, but so the point is, to summarize, is I'm kind of aware that we are in a really big transformation. How it's going to play out, I don't know, but yeah, these like inequality effects and the loss of just pure processing jobs,
Mm.
how it plays out, I don't have a good answer to that yet, but these are the things that I keep in my mind.
Got it, got it. Well, no, that's definitely a good point. I mean, I think with any sort of innovation and technology, we kind of see, different jobs being replaced. A good example is like, the elevator
Yeah,
person back
right. Yeah,
where they would sit there and press the button. Now you don't obviously need to do that
yeah,
anymore. But eventually those folks found new opportunities,
Yeah.
right? And the way we like to think about AI and kind of like human augmentation is it kind of unlocks the
Yeah.
creativity, the strategic aspects of humans, and there's still one thing that AI really can't do, which is build human relationships.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the clients we work with, it's like 80% of your day is done on this manual
Yeah.
task that you can automate, so you can
Yeah.
focus on building relationships with your customers, your users. You have more free time to be more creative. Like for me,
Hmm.
I have a whole bunch of different initiatives going on, but I tend to run into like writer's block, right? It's like
Hmm.
I don't know how to flesh this thing out. I have a great idea and it's like chicken scratch, but I'll
Yeah.
throw it into AI and it fills in the blanks, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Now I can accelerate what I'm doing. So,
Yeah.
but to your point, I think a lot of folks, whether due to lack of education or understanding of how AI can actually supplement what they're doing, that causes them to, kind of a knee-jerk reaction to say, I don't want to go down to space, I don't want to even explore it
Hmm.
because it's gonna harm me in some way, right? But really, it's a big benefit for pretty much the entire human population. So,
I think so too. It'll just speed things up in many, many ways. And to your point, that's what we tell our customers or potential customers, right? Like, let's say you needed to go through 1,000 LinkedIn profiles. It took you maybe 2 days to do it. Now you can do it in like 4 hours. So what will you do? Like, will you have more interviews? Will you think more about the strategic things? Like, what will you do? But then it does come back to that person of having the capacity to do more, right? Like to have good interviews or think strategically. So I just hope like it kind of does push us into that direction. Now I have this whole,
well, you
yeah.
definitely got to introduce me to that person that can go through 1,000 LinkedIn profiles in 2 days, because
My
that type of
personal
AI,
record is something like 850 something, but by the end of that day, I was like, I am done.
yeah, you're brain dead
We,
from all that.
you're brain dead, literally. Yeah, exactly. So, so actually, yeah, like when people sometimes say like, yeah, but I could do this. Like, yeah, how are you gonna feel after that? Like all your mental capacity is like lost somewhere else. So, yeah,
Exactly.
we're trying to do some measurements in comparison, like way early when we like did HyperScan's prototype. So, funny
Mhm.
story now.
Super cool. Super cool. All right, so taking a step back, obviously you're an early innovator in this space. As you're building HyperScan, what have you been seeing in the market? What's the overall sentiment for AI, and how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, the interesting thing that we saw, because we were actually pretty early, right after the big boom of like Gen AI, we immediately saw like, oh wow, we can access these models, and I know what I want to build. Is that how's this? I think there's a great saying by someone. It's like AI is everything in your software that doesn't work 100% of the time yet. So it's like we saw that people, it's like a new thing, but they still see this just as software, right? So
Mm,
we've been constantly upgrading the precision, or increasing the precision of how AI for us makes these calls, yes or no, like these filters. And we thought we started at a pretty good point. It was like, I think over 90% or something. And you think rationally, it's kind of like, yeah, well, we got most of it right? And sure, there's like some margin of error. But then we saw that our customers are like, they're accustomed to software working 100%, right? So they're like, oh, why are these? Oh, it's not kind of getting it, yada yada. It's like out of 100 people, I have like 2 missed or false flags or something. So obviously we need to work on that. It's non-intuitive because rationally you still save a lot of time. It's a bit of with a bit of an error, but
mm,
people just don't perceive, like they don't see your product as high quality yet back then, like at
mm,
that level. So that was one like counterintuitive thing. The other one is speed. When maybe like a year or so ago, we actually like got the MVP and like, got the first sort of tests. Is that we didn't think, like, imagine, like, again, rationally, if it takes somebody 2 days to scan 1,000 profiles, or maybe 3 days, right? And now we do it in, I think it was in the beginning like 3 hours. Like
mm,
rationally thinking, this is amazing. But again, if you put a software that processes something for 3 hours versus a regular software that just, it's instant, right? They're like, oh, why is this taking so long? Like, so the frames of reference have not changed. Like, they still see this as software. So, um, yeah, so those are like the interesting things that we've seen from, building with AI in it. And then there's obviously the whole user experience. Like, how do you think about that? How do you warn your users they might be the occasional error? How do you tell your users that their prompts or their questions really matter? Yeah, so now we're doing all sorts of interesting things in the next version that, for example, we'll be checking if you write up like a really bad question, but it doesn't work, right? That it'll give a warning sign. It's like, hey, like, are you sure? Like, for example, we had one user ask, like, is this person willing to relocate to some country, right? Like, and we asked, like, how would you know? How would you, as a person, be able to tell? Right? So there's this misconception with AI as well. So,
got it. Well, just joking here, but it sounds like a new startup idea called AI Gaslighter, where people can put in their prompts, and it's like, are you sure that's a good prompt?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I don't think you're good. You can try again.
But you know what, like these what's it called? I think ideogram, right? I love that, like, image generator. They do have this specific feature that I think is called like a prompt enhancer or something. You can turn it on and it will actually enhance your prompt. So it's not that everybody,
Definitely
yeah.
that in a lot of different AI native tools where they have that enhancer feature.
Yeah.
Which is like it's nice soft language, but really,
Yeah.
It's
It could be really funny. It's like, like super passive aggressive, right? Like, you know what? No, that's
I don't
great.
think you really know what you're doing, but
Yeah.
plus for effort.
Exactly. Like, that's
I'm
cute.
looking forward to the first AI native product that has a lot of these dark patterns.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, that's cute.
yeah. All right, so I mean, as you kind of think about how AI continues to evolve with new model performance, potentially new applications, use cases, and kind of mainstream adoption, how do you see AI impacting recruitment as an industry in the next 3 to 5 years?
It's a good one. And I'll maybe take even a bit of a step back and talk not about just recruitment, but software in general, because I think that's where a big changes might be coming. Because, maybe this is just me coming off of a really kind of the what's it called, the initial kind of falling in love feelings with Lovable, the AI, the honeymoon period, yeah, definitely. But we are about to release another app that I used Lovable to build, and that experience was great stuff, and it was so quick and so relatively easy. I mean, it's not like flawless, but it's kind of relatively easy that it just gets me thinking, like, and this is the worst it's gonna ever be. So if we get smarter models, or if they're more properly implemented in these kind of agentic flows, at one point, like, I could imagine, like, let's say maybe a year or two, is I see some software and I say, oh, can you crawl this software? And I need these features. It can just build it for me. So I think that is then changing everything we know about tech. And then for recruitment, right, like, or any industry, is right now.
You can actually do that now. So
you can.
You can take.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, you upload a screenshot and just say, "Build this for me," and then I mean, it's not flawless, it's not like 100%, but it's like 80 to 90, and you're like, "Holy shit, it just took it."
Yeah, I mean, the front end is like easy, and then you need to do the back end logic. But imagine at some point they'll be able to, like, actually go and crawl and see the functionality and get the logic of the software, and then you're like, well, I don't need this entire thing. And I've actually I've already started thinking, it's like, there's some, like, softwares like we use where I'm thinking, like, wait, this costs about, like, a couple thousand a year, and I'm using maybe 10% of the functionality. So can I just code it? Like, would it take me like a day or two? I'm not doing it now, but like the thought is there. So
I mean, traditional SaaS is going to be dying pretty soon, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, it just changes everything. But like, it'll need to be deeper. Like, there's something more added to it, right? Kind of like that. But yeah, and then if you extrapolate that to recruitment, is let's say, oh, I need a very specific thing and a tools kit or tool set for myself. That's one. Or the second thing is like fully agentic automated AI that it kind of is embedded and acts as a person on behalf of the company. So yeah, once you get to that point, there's like millions of jobs. And yeah, it's yeah, difficult to predict at that point, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just as a personal note, I actually have a whole bunch of agents doing, different jobs that I normally would do manually. I
nice.
call them my 15 full-time employees that
Right.
cost about $20 a month to
Yeah.
use.
I mean, I love this idea
But
with by NFX, I think it was the three-person unicorn or something like that, right? Like where you have a very, very tight startup team, a bunch of AI agents, and
right.
you don't need the same kind of workforce that you did before. I think it's like, an idealized state,
Yeah.
but still.
That's actually one of our goals here at Anyreach is to be a 10-person full-time team that gets to 100 million in revenue or $1 billion valuation because we're all
Hmm.
using agents, right? And one thing I discovered as I was building agents is it doesn't just manage the status quo of how you're doing the job. Sometimes it even expands your capability. That's super cool. I mean, I just created an AI agent to essentially replace our customer success team. So it's like a Slack bot slash agentic kind of workflow where anytime we close a deal and that
Nice.
proposal gets dropped, a signed proposal gets dropped in a Google Drive,
Hmm.
a Slack bot will just create that information, inform essentially the internal team of this new client, all the details about them. It'll create a new Slack channel so our team can organize, and then it automatically creates an external Slack channel to invite the customer. And then it also kicks off a onboarding email saying, here's the details of, yeah. So it's only on the kind of, kickoff workflow for customer success, but obviously there's so much more. Like you can have an AI agent jump into, every one of your weekly check-ins, take all that information, figure out your action items, throw it back into Slack as an internal team update, as well as send it to the customer. So that's kind of how we're thinking. All these different orgs and roles. There's so much that you can automate with AI and with agents as well. So super cool. Thanks for sharing that. Well, that kind of concludes our podcast here today at Anyreach Roundtable. Janis, thanks again for joining us. Just to our audience, we will be sharing Janis and HyperScan's details in the description of our podcast. So feel free to take a look at that if you're interested to connect. And so, to our audience, if you found this podcast insightful, give us a like, a subscribe, or hit the notification button to stay up to date on leading AI trends. I'm your host, Richard Lin of Anyreach, and we thank you again for tuning in.